control the pace. Way I rotate, baby, that's a little taste. Way I rotate, I'ma put you in your place.
Bad girl, no delay.
Baby, let's shake. I don't wanna stop, baby, I don't need a break. For the rose, you know I don't wanna wait. We can go late, make my body celebrate. I just wanna back it up on beat. Say your name in key. I know what I want from you. You know what you want from me. I just wanna back it up on beat. Say your name in key. I've been waiting on it all week. So tell me where you wanted me to be. Yeah.
Freeze at your back, the way I like it, can't deny. Your body bang like dynamite. You the feel I'm your kind of nice.
See me, eye to eye, we go back to back, we go 9 to 9. Body on it, dynamite. Take you to my posy, we can finalize.
Backstroke on it, swimming in the kitchen till the bus. Do everything to me, but baby, don't stop. You don't even need my consent, killing me, baby. I just want a little bit of your time, make a day so. Make we date tonight, take a joke, call up you. You can call me every time you want more. Move that thing, come rest on me now. I get the kind of way, go make you bend for me now. All night, baby, all night. Bend your back, hold my hand. Now you done make a nigga fantasize. I feel drowning out your river now. It's alright, realize. Come on, time, you're my vibe.
I just wanna back it up on beat. Say your name in key. I know what I want from you. You know what you want from me. I just wanna back it up on beat. Say your name in key. I've been waiting on it all week. So tell me where you wanted me to be. Yeah.
Freeze at your back, the way I like it, can't deny. Your body bang like dynamite. You the feel I'm your kind of nice.
See me, eye to eye, we go back to back, we go 9 to 9. Body on it, dynamite. Take you to my posy, we can finalize.
Got the money on deck, and I'm so big, so heavy on neck. Game on, friendly and set. Back, back, the man upset. Biggie boys on deck, and the brand so fly that they flex so X. Slam got the money on deck, life so soft, won't settle for less. And I know that my head let the man them shine. What does he come it on money long, shall he come online? Ooh, my make up online. But he for the long time, but the man them place a lot on to sign. But he then is fresh fun time, and the man them leave me alone. So intense what they do. So intense what they do. So it's fan for what they do. I miss it. Za. And I belly what's an abba. Ooga, coco frenny, what's an abba.
I put the money on deck, wrist so froze, I put ice on my neck. Say with the party done set, back, baby, pack on your friends. So. Biggie boys on deck, on the way to the bank, I'm assign you a check. Say the euros not less, so. Say the dollars not less, so. Baby come to my room, I not dress, so. Figure 8, put the ash on my chest, so. I not play with my baby like just, so. Put a boy on this boy on that neck. Oh, nah, it's yesterday making me go gaga, yeah. Every day, you dey go higher. You dey pray for my fuck, now you go die.
So intense what they do. So intense what they do. It's fan for what they do. I miss it. Za. And I belly what's an abba. Ooga, coco frenny, what's an abba.
think of ways that I fucked it up. Who gon' take my place if I don't end up beside you? Baby, when I'm alone, I just see your face inside my mirror. Let me the place where I go find someone like you, like you. Stay for your body like that too. Pass me the body I find too. Anything we don't have a Stay for your body like that too. Pass me the body I find too. Anything we don't have a Do you love me, baby? Yes, I do. Girl, I'm tryna make you my wife. Let's make it happen tonight. Yes, I do. Should I say it one more time? Should I say it one more time? Yes, I do. If I get down on one knee, baby, I'm tryna be. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Feel like to say I don't love you, but what they mean for us? Cause why'd you have to go and break my trust? Say trust. Deixa uma ser uma quaheri. Get away on my fancy. So should I stay just cause you want me?
Sorry, good luck, sorry, good boy. No, babe. Just gonna be what it said on the phone, babe. Better call me when you on your own, babe. Put it on me, talk to me softly. You can't find what I give you, nobody else. I know you love the crazy in what I do. Stay for your body like that too. Pass me the body I find too. Anything we do that Stay for your body like that too. Pass me the body I find too. Anything we do that Do you love me, baby?
Yes, I do.
Girl, I'm tryna make you my wife. Let's make it happen tonight.
Yes, I do.
Should I say it one more time? Should I say it one more time?
Yes, I do.
If I get down on one knee, baby, I'm tryna be. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
It's Young John, the wicked producer.
I look fly, I look good, I just smell nice, everything money I look fly, I look good, I just smell nice, everything
Africa, a continent of 54 countries, over 2,000 languages, and thousands of years of history, culture, resources, and innovation. This is the Africa I know, but this is not the story of Africa being told, because for too long, Africa has been painted as a problem to fix, not a future to invest in.
When I first came to the United States, I was hit by this narrative that the face of Africa was a hungry child and that the face of poverty was a female farmer from Africa.
But that narrative, it's outdated, it's incomplete, and it's holding us all back. So we are telling a new story. The story of Africa is one of opportunity. Africa is home to the youngest, fastest growing workforce in the world.
Literally 3 out of 4 Africans is an entrepreneur.
It's a leader in mobile banking, health innovations, and renewable energy. A hub of natural resources and a trendsetter setting pace in fashion, music, and the culture for the world. From Dakar to Nairobi, from Tunis to Cape Town, innovation is booming.
Without Africa, we would not be living the way that we live.
Investments in Africa are not charity, they are smart business.
It's critical to recognize the role that Africa is already playing, but is also going to play.
Any serious business person that is thinking about the future and they are not thinking about Kenya, Ghana, and Africa, then there is something wrong with their future.
Africa is moving, so you might as well tap in early.
From local entrepreneurs to Pan-African tech hubs, solutions are being built by Africans for Africans and for the world.
There's a phrase that says African solutions for African problems. We say African solutions for global problems.
Africans are not asking for a handout. They are asking for a handshake.
Africa's story isn't one of need, it's one of potential. And the world is better off when that story is told.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, Excellencies, friends. I believe it's on. Excellencies, friends, I apologize that we're starting a little late. We had a little incident right outside this street, and it's still being cleared out. So thank you for your patience and support. It's a wonderful day in New York, crazy Onga week, and the fact that you chose to be here means you care about you care about the issues, and you share our optimism about the African continent, our conviction that Africa is a return on investment, and that we need to change the narrative. At One, we fight for a more just world by demanding the investments needed to create healthier lives and economic opportunity, and we envision a world where Africa is an equal player. Right now, our continent is at a turning point in health, in energy, in finance, in creativity. The continent is not waiting for external solutions. Africa is leading, it's innovating, it's shaping solutions that the world needs. And that's why we need a new conversation, one that does not treat African countries as passive suppliers or perpetual recipients, but as innovators and strategic actors, partners in growth, defining the future from fintech to food security, from renewable energy to biotech, from creative economies to health. And today we're tackling some of those most urgent questions, shaping Africa's future. First, in health financing, we're going to be asking, is Africa ready to fund its own health priorities? And what mix of domestic resources, donor solidarity, and innovative finance will get us there? Then, our donors, big philanthropy and consultants reinforcing Africa's priorities or rewriting them. Finally, we'll hear lessons from global leadership on shifting geopolitics and new actors who can either constrain or strengthen Africa's sovereignty. Also today, we're excited to share the latest product from One. We have an amazing technology and AI team at One. And today we're going to be launching our AI-powered One Data Agent, which is the fastest, simplest way to access trusted health financing data. It's a type of tool we need to navigate this turning point in Africa's health sovereignty. Across it all, one theme is clear. We must shift the narrative away from risk and resistance towards opportunity and investment, away from dependency towards sovereignty. And let's be clear, Africa is not a risk. Africa is a return. So today, we're going to first hear from our partners. And in addition to my role as president and CEO of the One Campaign, I'm a very, very, very proud trustee of the Rockefeller Foundation. The Rockefeller Foundation has been taking big bets, redefining Africa's narrative, and also investing, not only in energy access, health, food security, and at the forefront of this is Liz Yee. Liz is a leader. Not only is she brilliant, she's compassionate, she cares deeply about this work, and she looks good doing it. She's wearing a Nigerian designer today, and I'm so proud and delighted to welcome my friend Liz Yee to make some remarks.
Okay, I gotta clear that up for just a second. This Nigerian designer was told to me by Ndidi, so it's really her jacket that I am wearing. So, because I know she brings the looks. Thank you so much for the incredible introduction, Ndidi, and thank you for your leadership, both of the One campaign, but also because you make Rockefeller Foundation not a side hustle, but really part of your day hustle, and we really, really appreciate you and your visionary leadership. And on behalf of the Rockefeller Foundation, I am pleased to welcome you to our convening center. This is a really special space for those of you who haven't yet been here, just because at this time of year, it exemplifies to all of us that we can do so much more when we're actually together and we can drive progress. And it feels like that belief is a little harder to find these days. And we're meeting at a moment when skepticism and global collaboration and global aid and trust in institutions just isn't as strong as it used to be. And that's really, really difficult given all of the challenges that we're facing right now. But thankfully, our world has more people like Ndidi, like all of you here who have come together to really help find the answers and drive progress for people. So I just wanted to share something because we love data and we use it to actually figure out where we spend our time. And earlier this month, we commissioned a poll that polled about 36,000 people in 34 different countries because we were curious to understand where are people in terms of their desires and belief on global collaboration. And 75% of those people said they support global collaboration if it's proven to solve problems effectively. And 9 out of 10 people said, we're interested in working together on these core issues that you just raised, Ndidi: food, health, water security. So that shows that people do, and they want to believe that progress is possible. They want to make sure that they're part of it. And what they need from us in this room is that collaboration and the proof points that actually work to drive progress. Someone said to me earlier this week that action leads to progress, and I think that video that you showed just showed that Africa is leading the way, not just for itself, but for the world, and we are here to support that. So I hope that you keep that in mind as you go through the week, that you realize the privilege that we have being here and the responsibility that comes with it to make sure that we drive action and progress for people on the continent and around the world. And so thank you very much for being here. Thanks for your time, and thanks, Ndidi, for your leadership.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Liz, and thank you to the entire Rockefeller team and the One team for all you do on a daily basis. I want to recognize Tom Preston, our board chair. In Africa, we always have to recognize our elders. There are many dignitaries here. Tom is a phenomenal visionary leader who built an amazing career in corporate America, but is a global citizen and has just given 20 years of service to One and continues to serve as a visionary leader behind what we do. So please give Tom a round of applause. And other partners, funders, and collaborators around the room, thank you for all you do. We're kicking it straight away into our first debate, and we're going to be debating, is Africa ready to fund its own health priorities? Our moderator is the amazing Larry Maddow, who is one of my big heroes in the media industry. And on the affirmative, we have Dr. Magda Robalo, who is president of IGHD and former minister of Guinea-Bissau. On the negative, we have Lois Pace, a dear friend, regional director for the Americans, FIRC, and former U.S. Health and Human Services. And I'm going to now hand it over to Larry to do the magic. Over to you, Larry.
Hey, how's everyone doing? Okay, listen, we need the same energy that you started with, so let's try that one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, how y'all doing? Such a spontaneous audience, completely unprompted. I'm excited to have this debate. The way this works is that we will have 3 minutes of opening statements. They will each have a chance for a rebuttal, and then closing statements. And you guys decide who's the winner. Okay? So I need for y'all to pay close attention to what they're saying, and then at the end you will decide who's most convincing. Can we do that? Yeah. Awesome. So, is Africa ready to fund its own health priorities? You have seen what's happening in the world. Aid budgets have been cut. Everything that we thought we knew about how the world operates is no longer there. And yet, we still somehow to make sure people get health. So, are you ready, ladies?
Sure.
So, again, Dr. Magda Arobalo is in the affirmative. No, I'm sorry.
She's very.
That's how you know she's ready. And Lois Space is in the negative. So, whenever you're ready, Dr. Magda, you can begin your opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Good afternoon, everyone. Really pleased to be here and have this conversation with my sister, Lois. So my point is to answer your question. Yes, Africa is ready to take care of its own destiny. Of course, it cannot be under the upheaval that we find ourselves right now. We need an orderly transition, but Africa can take care of its own destiny. In fact, some countries are already doing it. In the medium to long run, if we fix some of the global and domestic issues, we should be able to take care of our people. It's going to be a journey, but we can do it. I'll make 5 points to set the background straight. But allow me to start by quoting the newly released America First Global Health Strategy. And I quote, "Despite the millions of lives saved, and African nations are grateful for it, health foreign assistance has been inefficient and wasteful, has created silos and kingdoms within ministries of health, created parallel healthcare delivery systems, vertical programs with fragmentation and duplication, and perversive incentives that encourage self-perpetuation." End of quotes. This is not a feature of the US foreign assistance only, but of most, if not all, international multilateral organizations established over the past 20 years or so with good intentions, of course, but this is what we came out to see. My first thing that I want you to keep in mind is that this is not a global health financial crisis alone. It's a broader conversation on global economic and financial policies and an obsolete financial system designed from pre-independence times, which are characterized by severe power imbalance, unfavorable trade terms that inhibit local value creation and generate underperformance of GDP growth for African countries. Urgent reform of the global health and financial architecture is needed. The second thing I want you to know is that debt repayment, natural resource extraction, profit repatriation by foreign investors, and illicit financial flows from Africa significantly outweighs foreign aid and investments. We have the money we need to finance our health systems. The third point I will mention to you is less than 40% of the funding reach the people that need them. If PEPFAR tells you that we are funding Guinea-Bissau for $1 billion, you should know that only 40% of that money gets down to the people, to the communities that need it. 60% don't get down to, so actually the dependency is not as big as we have been made to believe. 60%, keep this number, 60% of funding is spent on technical assistance, program management, and other forms of overhead, We have seen salaries of CEOs recently, how much it is, within programs to support countries, African nations. These funds bypass national public financial systems. Their management is opaque. Their terms and conditions displace national expertise, talent, ownership, and leadership, and create parallel procurements, supply chain, data, and delivery systems rather than strengthening national health systems. We have seen what happened during COVID. My fourth point, African countries are struggling with ballooning debt service obligations. Last year, IMF said that countries in sub-Saharan Africa are expected to spend about $81 billion on debt servicing within the 2023 and 2025 period, exceeding projected external development assistance and contracting fiscal space for domestic investment in health and education. You ask why? Because of high borrowing costs for African countries.
Right, Dr. Magda, you have 30 more seconds.
Yes. And my fifth point is that Africa's resolve in asserting its agency, united voice and leadership in demanding a new public health and financial order is here to stay. We are not moving back. We need a mindset shift, we need a focus shift, we need a reality shift, and we're going to do it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, Lois, hit us. Let's hear it.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Dr. Magda. You know, a lot of people in this room know me, and they know I would not be doing this except for Ndidi asking me to do this. So recognize it's an exercise. We're all being stretched. That said, so getting to the question, I wish this were true. I want this to be true. I think all of us need this to be true. And yet, I question whether it is true that Africa is ready in this moment. Could be. Like you were saying, Dr. Magda, making some very important and sound arguments. And of course, it's not just a noble goal, it's a necessary one. Yet, we have been here before. We have declared the need for Africa to fund its own health priorities. And many of us, I wasn't around for the Abuja Declaration, although I could have been. But many of us still reference that target. And we know that only a handful of countries have met that target. 10% of the continent. And it doesn't even include countries that are now calling for this change. And I think it's quite, again, important that we have these convenings happening, like with the Sovereignty Summit, and yet those very countries haven't yet necessarily met that target set aside in 25 years ago. So that's one thing. Now, we can say, okay, let's put that to the side. Let's put to the side public sector financing. We have the private sector. Africa has a thriving private sector. Yes, and more of that, please. And yet, when we talk about privatizing healthcare, that's when the bumps come up on my arms, right? As an American, we know a lot about the privatization of healthcare, and we know that there are challenges with the privatization of healthcare. Again, I hope that it can be done right and well, and yet we know that not just in the States, but in many parts of the world, that has presented a major challenge. Unfortunately, when it comes to the private sector, they're going to be focused on profit no matter what. That's their job. And as they're trying to earn that profit, those costs get passed on not just to governments themselves, but to people needing that care. We also know that that privatization can lend itself to greater, wider disparities, right, and inequities, which we absolutely don't want or need, especially in the Africa region. And then finally, there's the issue of that leading to poor outcomes for people who already are struggling to meet these metrics and sustain this progress that we've realized over the years with our various investments. So I won't leave you just with all doom and gloom. I think there's an opportunity for compromise in this question. What does it look like for us to really pursue multilateral funding at a regional level And many of you who know me know that this is something I've talked a lot about in my former role that shall not be named. But in all seriousness, we have seen this happen, and it has held promise for the region to take that sort of blended approach to its financing, not just shifting immediately to sort of this nationalized approach that isn't necessarily possible in this moment, nor is it necessarily sustainable in this moment. But absolutely, Africa should be dictating its own priorities, and by coming together meaningfully and effectively, they can transition gradually to more of a model that emphasizes domestic resources, but spread that risk across their own investors, really optimize those very investments and be efficient in those purchases of vaccines or paying health workers or whatever. And then finally, they could even crowd in private sector in a way that protects people from the risks of that investment, but still invites that diverse resource. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Give her a big round of applause. Dr. Magda, what is your response? As Africans, we like a good declaration. We like a good strategy. We like a good vision, 2063. But we're not the most committed to implementation, so.
That's a narrative of the past, and I think many in this room knows that Africa is changing every single day. It's changed, and we are moving forward. We have a vibrant private sector. We have a youthful, talented, dynamic population. Probably one of the most entrepreneurial people around the world. And we are going to make sure that the past narrative, the narratives of the past don't define who we are.
Right, but sometimes in some countries, 70% of the health budget is funded by donors. If they pull out, people will die.
This is what I'm saying. That 70%, only 40% of 70% actually gets to the people. At the end of the day, if you look at out-of-pocket rates in African countries, if you look at inequity in accessing health care, it can't be as bad as it is right now. So the argument that if we nationalize health systems, if government takes care of controlling, regulating, and then implementing their priorities with agency and within equal partnerships, we are going to reduce inequities and out-of-pocket payments rather than what we are seeing right now. Most people actually don't have access to quality health care, or they resort to private clinics because government systems are so weak to cater for the people out there. Therefore, the narrative that we think is the future is the current one, and we need to change that by believing in ourselves. We don't need to reinvent the wheel and borrow from the US or from France or from wherever. We have our own realities, and our programs, our priorities need to be defined on what an African health system should be based on the culture, the realities, and the needs of the people.
All right. Lois, your rebuttal.
Well, thank you again.
Short of privatizing all of healthcare and pricing out people who don't have money.
Not that you're biased. Well, there's that. Listen, I really want to come back to this issue of equity because I do think it's an important theme that we both raised. And, it's certainly true that, there is inequity currently. And I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is the importance of reducing, if not improving, the status of that reality, frankly. What do I mean? So when we think about nationalization of healthcare, for example, one of the things that we've seen take place is this very transactional sense of favoritism within government spending. Oh, okay, I'm going to spend money in this city or town or village because this is where my supporters are. And I'm going to direct money away from these other pieces because that's what my predecessor did and I don't like that. And one of the benefits of multilateral funding is it's been able to cut through some of that politicization in a way that protects some pretty vulnerable populations. I think we talk about oversight and we can talk about reform on both sides. And yet, one reality is who is really going to call out the lack of funding of harm reduction? Who's going to call out the lack of funding for people living with HIV, which could still happen? Who's going to really address not family planning? And it's not just about equity, it's also about innovation. And what do I mean by this? What has happened a lot of times with external funding is it's been on the cutting edge of work, and it's actually assumed some of the risk when it comes to making these investments, saying, okay, there's some emerging evidence that we should focus more on non-communicable diseases, for example. What can we do to press in that space? Or just R&D more generally, which is of great interest to the region. So there's a way to actually protect the region by ensuring there's still some external funding coming in to assume that risk and drive the reward towards the continent.
All right, fantastic. We are now going to go to the closing statements. This is where you really make your pitch to the audience to convince them on your point of view. What do you want in 2 minutes? Dr. Magda first.
Okay, thank you, Larry. I just want to, in 2 seconds, to say, when we talk about governments taking care of their priorities and then managing their health systems, we are not talking about the nationalization from the communist time as we know it, number one. Number two, we remember what happened when the World Bank wanted government out of the education, the health sector. Disaster, absolute disaster. And it's part of the problems we have today, because they said government hands off. And then we see we didn't train people, we didn't build health systems, and we are in the situation we are today. So we don't want to go back there. My closing statements is to say, African nations, as any country in the world, aspire to be healthier, safer, stronger, truly independent and prosperous. Our partnership with the rest of the world needs a reset, because we strongly believe in our capacity to take care of our own people. We are not dismissing global solidarity. We are saying we need to be respected. Our new public health order demands that we define the terms of our own priorities. Africa has the human and natural resources to innovate and finance its own development, and we are calling for fair trade terms. We are calling for fair global financial systems, more inter-Africa trade, and strong public-private partnerships. If we continue to borrow at high interest rates, there is no way African countries are going to be able to invest in their health systems. We need to fix the financial systems before we can assist with them in the health system. We have embarked on a journey that is not going to be easy. There will be significant challenges. We are aware of it. The current geopolitical tensions are both a challenge, but also an opportunity. And Dr. Tedros said the difference between a crisis and an opportunity is leadership. And Africa is ready to lead. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. No pressure, Lois. Can you top that?
Okay, thanks, guys. Get into the end to let me know I lost.
Okay, let's hear it. Closing statement.
All right. Well, look, I think I'm going to come back to this idea of balance, right? Doesn't need to be an either or, all or nothing solution, honestly. And I'll just come back to what the moderator pointed out. Right now, external funding, whether it's ODA or philanthropy, is still mainly supporting the region. And what I don't want, and actually, Dr. Magda, I should say glad that you brought up the America First strategy. Whew, still recovering from some of these things. But, look, we know what it looks like to have and feels like to have the rug pulled out from under us. There is no more USAID.
It was the best thing that happened to us.
So fair enough. And yet, it was a sudden, it needed to happen, but it might not have needed to happen the way that it did.
I agree.
So,
we agree.
And so what I want is not to have that shock to your system as well. What I want is to ensure that we make this transition responsibly, not slowly, to be clear, thoughtfully, responsibly, and respectfully, right? On your terms. I do think that's very important. Just a couple of more pieces, just for the good of the order, right? Recognizing that the needs aren't national. And so the resources also cannot be national. So I'm always going to have some degree of globalism in me, right? I'm always going to be a bit of a multilateralist because I've seen this, I've lived this, living through COVID and through other issues. We know that we have to still think in terms of solidarity, like you said, Dr. Magda. The other final point I want to make is this, and it might be surprising for folks to hear. Don't let these people off the hook. Do not walk away from the responsibility that countries outside of Africa have to Africa to still support Africa's development, not to be in charge of it, right? Not to dictate the terms, but Africa didn't cause these problems by itself, and Africa shouldn't have to be pulled into solving all the problems alone. Take the climate community and the example that we have there with the Loss and Damage Fund, right? There has been a commitment made, an important one made, to pool resources from around the world to protect communities in Africa and elsewhere from the effects of climate change. And I would argue we need a similar call and cry to continue to have that restorative approach when it comes to global public health. So with that, I thank you.
All right. So, this is good recovery, she said. This is the moment of truth. Having heard the arguments, members of the jury, how do you...
Oh my gosh, I can leave it. I know where some of you live. I have your numbers. You want an invite to Panama?
Right, so, having considered thoughtfully the arguments you have heard for and against this debate, how many of you think Dr. Magda made her case most convincingly? Okay. And how many of you were convinced by Lois? It sounds like a tie to me, so I'm going to have to do that again. This is an African election. and also especially an American election. Everyone's catching strays today. Oh, and the FIFA election. Wow, does nobody run proper elections? So let's do this all over again. This is like the recount. Because
again, yeah, the trauma is real.
It's not about who votes, about who counts the votes. And I am the person counting the votes here. So I'm going to need to hear your claps, your hoots and the hollers. How many of you were convinced by Dr. Magda? I'd say we're like a 7 out of 10 there. Right. How many of you were convinced by Lois?
We're just gonna serve in office together. It's fine.
So again, that was like a 7.1. All right, thank you. Thank you both so much. Give them a big round of applause. And now, one of them with the vice president for the other. And now to tell us more about how one is making data on health financing easier to access and to understand, please welcome David McNair, Executive Director at One, and Prem Ramaswamy, Head of Data Commons at Google.
Hey, how are you all doing? So I'm David from One, and we fight for economic opportunities and healthy lives.
Hi everyone, my name is Prem Ramaswamy. I'm a product manager at Google, and our mission is to organize all the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful.
We're here at UN Week, and if you go back to the UN Charter, you'll read about the importance of data for democracy, for economies, and for functioning societies. But in the days in which we live, with AI, with amazing technology, with a wealth of information, there are some very basic questions that we still can't answer. And we believe that that's a fixable problem, and so we decided we were going to try and fix it.
So 2 years ago, Google embarked on this journey building an open source platform named Data Commons. The goal of Data Commons was to organize all the world's public data, put it in a common knowledge graph, and then make that easily accessible with a natural language search interface. We ended up becoming the backend to the UN stats system 2 years ago, but there was a missing piece to that puzzle, which is how do we work with the NGO community? And that's where it became obvious to work closely with the One campaign to figure out how we can make this data more accessible. And over the last 2 years, we've worked closely with One, ranging from launches like the climate finance file 2 years ago to creating a Python library for coders. And that brings us to today's milestone that we think really makes this accessible to organizations, funders, governments, policymakers around the world.
So we're here to launch the One Data Agent. This is a first of its kind agentic search tool that allows you to answer questions about where health financing is going in seconds. Prem can't say this, but if you want to find out information, you could go to Gemini, you could go to OpenAI, but it's likely that it will take a while and it will make stuff up. And so you then have to go back and check, is it correct? Or you risk your credibility. So what we've done is we've built a tool. We had health experts that manually coded tens of thousands of indicators, trained an AI tool to do what only it can do, but then protect the actual data. So we know that when you ask a question, you'll get reliable information, which is the most up-to-date, and it will take seconds to produce. In our early testing, it shows that this tool is up to 60 times faster than traditional methods for finding this data.
And I'm a geek, so I have to geek out for a second. We're going to use large language models for this, but large language models are good at language. They're not great at data, and this is the hallucination risk David's talking about. And this is where we use these agents to do what they're good at, which is take our infinite space of human queries and turn that into the finite space of variables and indicators, pulling the right data at the right time. But that data is pulled from a database. So that data isn't touched by the large model, which means there is zero risk of this hallucination. So we have reliable, trustable data that organizations can now use to understand. And can you give some of those examples of those organizations?
Sure. So we got a global fund replenishment coming up. So imagine you're Raj Kumar, and you're reporting on how much Germany spends on HIV and AIDS in Malawi. Simply type the question in, and you'll get an answer. Imagine you're a health minister in Mali, and you want to know per capita how much your government is spending on responding to polio. Type the question in, you get the answer. Imagine you are an activist, and you want to create an index of the countries that spend the most on health per capita. Type the question in, get the answer in seconds. I used to do that kind of thing. It used to take my team like weeks to do. It's now available in seconds.
And I just want to highlight like what a wonderful partner One has been in this. They've been in this with us for 2 years now, but they're the best partner to work with because they understand open source. They're not doing this for a competitive advantage. They're doing this to make it available to everybody. And what that means is the work we've done today is not only available to the One campaign, it's available to anybody who wants to play with this out there. Because I don't think that my four walls contain all the creativity of the world. We need to let those 1,000 flowers bloom and see where this goes in the future. And that's the innovation I'm excited for.
So this is about democratization and putting data into the hands of people without needing to go to school and having huge amounts of expertise either on the technical side or on the health side. But it's also about representation. We talk a lot about the lack of African representation at the G20, at the G7, all these fora. The governance of the future is going to be shaped by AI, and virtually no one talks about the lack of African data in large language models. And what this is doing is we're cleaning the data, we're producing it, and it is training the large language models that Google's using. So if you go to Google Search today and ask for this data, it will be the data that the One campaign produced. Now, I want to acknowledge my team because This is really the brainchild of Jorge Rivera, our data genius. And he's going to, on video, show us the tool, show us what you can do. And then Michaela, who's our creative genius, is going to make you laugh and kind of give you a bit of a sense of why this matters and how we're going to communicate this with our audiences. But we think this is a game changer, and it's only the start, because having built the tool for health finance, we can now apply it to agriculture, nutrition, like whatever it might be. And it's only the start, because we're on a journey together. We're learning, we've got access to state-of-the-art tech engineering tools, and we're applying that to the world's toughest problems. So shall we hand over to Jorge Rivera? Please give Jorge a round of applause, because he has done an amazing job on this.
How much do citizens spend on out-of-pocket healthcare costs compared to health financing by governments? Previously, you could have started with searching the internet, or maybe databases that you think could contain the data. With the One Data Agent, you can just ask. The agent will run one or more queries on your behalf to get exactly what you need. Once you get the results, you can filter, select specific countries and indicators. You can see the data on a table or build a chart. With traditional databases and platforms, you have to read and click your way to the right data. You may need to visit multiple platforms. Thanks to the Data Commons Knowledge Graph, the agent works seamlessly with data from multiple sources. You no longer need to figure out how to map data from one source to another. This isn't a chatbot guessing an answer. The agent retrieves the best and latest data and shows the source for every point. No real-time guesses, no gap filling. You can even ask a follow-up question. The agent understands the context of your search and will help you identify the right data. We provide metadata for all indicators and tools for you to start exploring the data. You can download it or share it with others. This is all designed to cut the friction in data prep to near zero. You get that time back for analysis, insight, and impact. The One Data Agent is the shortest path from raw data to insight.
Hi, I'm the One Data Agent.
And I'm a database. So you are looking for health financing data, not a problem. I just need the name of the portal, the name of the country, the year, and the exact indicator code. Okay, no typos, none.
Or you could just ask me in plain language.
So we have Nigeria, HIV, 2022. Okay, cross-checking from the World Health Organization, carry the one.
Done. Trusted data, curated by experts, and ready to use.
Oh, you need all of West Africa now? Well, I'm gonna need to start over.
Our tool's so much better.
Okay, you know what? It builds character to wrangle data, okay? And that is what people want.
Actually, I think they want data that they can find really easily. That's why I search across tens of millions of data points from global sources. So you don't have to. The One Data Agent. A power tool for policy people.
I'm so proud of David McNair and his entire team. Thank you, David. Thank you, Michaela. Where is she? And the entire team for all the hard work and the visioning. And thank you to Prem and the Google team. We appreciate this partnership. It's been a wonderful part. Please give a round of applause to Google. It's a wonderful partnership, one built on trust and a commitment to justice and equity. When I met Prem, I said, there's an unusual guy at Google. He cares deeply about people, and that's what we need, and that's what we appreciate about you. So thanks for your leadership. Please extend our gratitude to the rest of the team. We're moving swiftly, and I just want a bit of interaction before we call up our next group. So we're celebrating how Africa leads, and at the One campaign, we're changing the narrative. You heard that earlier, because we see Africa as really a future to invest in, not a problem to solve. And as a partner of innovation, leadership, and all the great opportunities that exist. So I'm going to be asking you to vote on pathways we're looking at when we think about innovation for Africa. I'll read them out first, and then you vote with your hands. We had a technology glitch, so you were going to vote using using our data portal. So first, agriculture and food security, which you know I love. You interact with African agriculture every day. Every time you have a cup of coffee or a chocolate bar, Africa is leading with climate-smart farming, digital tools to connect farmers to markets, resilient seeds and techniques. African agriculture is producing, exporting, and feeding the whole world with innovation. So that's number one. Number two, creative industries. Afrobeats, Nollywood, African fashion. It all showcases African creativity that shapes global culture, generates jobs, and shapes the global narratives about Africa. That's why we're so excited about one's new African Diaspora Creative Council, which we launched yesterday. It showcases the leadership and the power of connecting storytelling with advocacy. And we have a great group. Go check out our Instagram to see who is on our Diaspora Creative Council. Number three, renewable energy and climate solutions. Africa has 60% of the world's best solar resources, as well as massive reserves of minerals and metals, critical for clean energy technologies, from off-grid solar solutions to cook cleaning innovations. African entrepreneurs are creating scalable, affordable energy solutions. And countries like Morocco, Kenya, and South Africa are leading in large-scale renewable energy investments. Number four, fintech and digital payments. I think Africa is leading clearly on this one because I don't have to go to a bank in Nigeria. I have, here you still go to banks. Africa has pioneered mobile money and financial inclusion tools with platforms like M-Pesa from Kenya becoming a global model. African fintech startups are leading in digital wallets, cross-border payments, micro-lending. It's redefining how finance works with African leadership and innovation. And last but not the least, health and biotech. African scientists and innovators are advancing biotech, vaccine production, medical solutions tailored to local needs, but with a global impact. Outside the event, we have a story box just outside this hall where you meet those innovators and hear their stories. Like Kemisola Bolariwa from Nigeria, who invented a smart bra that uses sensors to detect cancer early, potentially saving thousands of lives. So those are the areas you have to vote. So I'm going to ask for a round of applause and see which one actually wins, because we need a real vote this time. So by show of applause, number one, who is voting for African agriculture? Uh-oh. All right, we have to convince you guys. Creativity. Woo! Energy. Where are the Rockefeller team members? Fintech. Health. So I think we have a tie between creativity and health. And we are combining them at the one campaign. That's what one of our Diaspora Creative Council members are doing. And we're definitely committed to showcasing those innovations. We're going to be working with many of you in this room to really change the paradigm and change the narrative, shifting that thinking from Africa as a risk and a place for assistance to thinking about opportunity and investment, where we no longer see dependency but sovereignty, and we have to unlock something powerful because Africa is a return, not a risk. So join us in this campaign. So still the G20, we're taking on this negative bias to reduce the cost of capital for Africa and ensure fairer financing. So join us in this fight. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand back to Larry.
All right, we're going to have a quick conversation here now. Please help me welcome David Beasley, former governor of South Carolina and former executive director of the World Food Program. We only have a short time here, Governor, so we were talking about how everything we knew about the world is changing. The U.S. is stepping away from its global leadership. Overseas direct assistance is down. You have a unique perspective as having served in government and also as the executive director of the World Food Program. How are you processing this current moment? And how does Africa navigate this?
You know, when Trump was elected in 2016, and I got the phone call from some UN friends about taking over the World Food Program. And I said, look, I'm not interested in a job. But I got talked into it. And the Republican and Democrat senators who control foreign ops were like, you're the only one that can talk Trump out of not cutting the budget. And I'm like, I don't know about that, but I don't need a job. Let me go try to talk him out of it. But anyway, I got kicking and screaming, took the role. And it wasn't a hard sell to Trump. It really wasn't. I went to him straight. Of course, I used Ivanka and all the friends around, making the case that it would cost more money not to do it than if you cut the money. It's going to really be extraordinary impact on America and the rest of the world. And so actually the funding went from a few billion, and by the time I left, I had raised $14 billion the last year. 55, $60 billion over 6 years. But with that, we stabilized populations. We minimize migration because most people in the world don't want to migrate. Right. They don't. But if they can't feed their children and they don't have any degree of peace, they go do what any mom and dad in this room would do. So if we can build the resilience and the programs, and this gets into the part of frustration from Western donors especially, is charity, 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 philanthropy, philanthropy, and charity is not going to solve poverty and hunger. It helps. It's got to be capital investment, empowerment, because I can tell you, if you want to learn capitalism, you go give an African woman the same tools you give everybody else in the world. I've never seen anything like it. And I can break this down in 14 different ways, not hypothetically, Larry. I'm talking about experientially, because there's more talent in Africa than anywhere on the planet. With the minerals and the talent, why is it not happening? Now, I can talk about that all day long, because the young people are ready to explode. They're ready to take Africa to extreme successes. And the question is, what is the West particularly doing to prevent it and not allowing it to happen? You know, so.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. Where do we even begin? So let me try this differently. A lot of people talk about Africa and the mineral resources and extraction. I just came back from Goma in Eastern DRC, where President Trump famously said he's getting minerals as part of the peace agreement there. But Africans keep getting warned about, don't take money from China because that's bad. You get it's debt trap diplomacy. But they build roads and railways and ports and nice shiny things that you can see. And the Americans and the Europeans lecture Africans constantly. So. Oh yeah, I mean, obviously I've been in Eastern DRC many times in some very difficult places. And in fact, I had some of our folks were killed a few years ago with the Italian ambassador, but that's a whole nother story. But you can take Sudan, when Sudan did the deal with Chinese on refineries. Right. And the same thing in other places. And the U.S. got upset and mad with these countries that you did something with China. I'm like, wait a minute. So you wouldn't do it yourself. You wouldn't cooperate and collaborate with this country. And they go because they don't have any other option. And they go do it with China. And now you'll get mad at them because they did it with China? I said, come on. Get your head out of the sand and let's be realistic and find paths forward. Because the minerals in Africa, the benefits of the value of those minerals, they need to stay in Africa. Because if they do, the children will get the education they need, the infrastructure will be in place, and the debt that is just pounding almost every African government. When you look at the debt alone, because I dealt with this when COVID hit. When COVID hit, we were already facing major hunger increases. I'm not talking about just general hunger. I'm talking about what we would call on the brink of starvation. They don't know where the next meal is coming from. That went from 80 million my first year to 135, my second year to 276, my third year because of COVID, and then Ukraine took it to 350. But Africa got pounded. You had increase in fuel, deflation, inflation of different sorts of value of a currency. Their debt was going up. They didn't have enough money to service debt and have social safety net programs. So I was trying to get debt relief for the African countries. And one of the things that I did was went to several countries that were owed the money. I said, how about do debt relief and we take the money that they would pay you and let's put it to social safety net programs. But again, social safety net programs are good, but this is the problem I've run into with United States, which obviously was the number one funder. I mean, I raised, my last year was $7 billion, $7.4 billion from the United States. I took Germany from 300 or 400 million up to $2 billion. But how did I do that? Because this is a valid question, Larry. And what is it? A taxpayer in Germany, same thing as a taxpayer in Texas.
Why should I send my money down to Chad or Guatemala when I got funding needs right here on education, infrastructure, health care, whatever it might be? A very valid question. And so my answer would be, if you're not going to do it out of the goodness of your heart that you love your neighbor, then you better do it out of your national security interest and your financial interest. And then I would lay out practically, not hypothetically, anecdotally, it costs a lot more not to address root cause versus destabilization and mass migration. And when you lay it out like that, I haven't met a taxpayer anywhere in any country when you lay it out that way that doesn't say, well, we should fund that then. I'm like, you're exactly right. But the governments have got to give the donor nations, whether it's the World Food Program or NGOs, give us the flexibility, not just to hand out food, but give the tools necessary so they're growing their own food, creating their own markets. And I tell you, I've seen it firsthand. It's so exciting to see an African woman just revolutionize a village because now she's got the tools she needs. Anyway, I can go on and on about that.
Okay, the counter argument, and you make a really good point. The counter argument is that you create a culture of dependency if people constantly rely on aid. And as Dr. Magda said here, for instance, only 40% of the funding actually gets to the people that need it. The rest of it is, I don't know, consultants and people in the middle and fat salaries. It does not benefit the people that need it. So maybe aid is not the best way to do this.
Aid should be a gap filler. I think we've got to, and the UN has been bad at this. The UN sort of poo-pooed the private sector. Well, how do you think the United States and most Western developed nations got to where they are? Private sector. How do we empower and inspire the private sector to take ownership of these issues from country to country? Now, why do you think the private sector, particularly in developed nations, have not invested like we would hope in Africa? I've raised more money, I think, than probably anybody in history for feeding African people.
Right.
So I probably shouldn't tell this story. I'll probably regret it.
No, please say it.
So I'm in one of these off-the-record, no recording sessions, either G20 or G7, I can't remember. And I was really frustrated. And I said, I don't use notes. And I said, the problems of the world are getting so great. I said, you're like little children running around playing whack-a-mole. You run over here, that game, you touch it and something pops up, and you're not slowing down to solve anything. You just run around touching things. And I said, let me ask you, Africa. And I remember Museveni said to me, he said, Beasley, he said, if Europe doesn't come to Africa, Africa's coming to Europe. And what was he saying? And so I said to them, let me ask you something. Why is Africa not developing? I said, is it the color of their skin? Oh, no. I said, exactly. It's not. There's more talent in Africa than any place on the planet. We're not giving them the tools, the resources. And I said, you've got some guilt for what happened a few hundred years ago, right, and you're not holding these leaders to transparency, integrity, rule of law, corruption, and these children are ready to get it done. And we need to get out of the way, give them the tools they need. Now, I can go from country to country to country, and God bless, I appreciate what the U.S. has done, Germany has done. I can go on and on. But the U.S. will go into a country, and they'll do some programs here and there on humanitarian development. And don't even get me started how the humanitarian equation and the development, they don't talk to each other. They don't coordinate. And those were systems built 50 years ago that are not irrelevant today, but it's different today. And so Germany will come in and do a little bit of program over there in, let's say, DRC, right, and France will do a little program over here. They aren't working together, and they're not scaling up. And so I used to ask when I would go into a country, particularly my first few months, I would ask, and these are wonderful people. They really are. UNICEF, WHO, WFP, yada, yada, yada. And now, because I'm trying to learn the UN system my first few months, so I said, how long have you been here? And these are the country directors, good people, good hearts. We've been here 30 years. We've been here 40 years, proudly so, 25 years. And I say, maybe it's not working?
It's certainly not working.
So what should you be doing? My goal of the World Food Program was to put the World Food Program out of business. Not by cutting it recklessly, but by giving the tools and the systems in place such that people are taking care of themselves and don't need us anymore.
Right.
I mean, that's success. 200 years ago, the world's population was 1.1 billion. 85 to 90% of everybody on the planet was in extreme poverty. Today, less than 9%.
Right.
Let's don't tear down the systems that's reaching and sharing more wealth, but the 9% that we're not reaching, let's don't give up on them. I mean, they're made in God's image. They're our brothers and our sisters, and let's do everything we can to improve the systems and give the flexibility to their operations and empower them. And where we're in the way from developed nations, let's get out of the way and to give them the tools they need, because, and that's worldwide.
Right.
But I know when you remember guy Scott Pelley, 60 Minutes?
Of course.
All right, so Scott and I were doing one heck of a powerful story on, I'm getting pretty fired up here, as you can see.
Yeah, so, they're about to kick us off the stage, so real quick.
I know, we're going to get kicked off. This is about a minute and a half story now. So, we were doing this story that was, it riveted America and changed Trump policy and on Yemen, as well as Saudi Arabia and UAE. And we're demicing, getting off the stage. And Scott says, Governor, you got the greatest job on the planet, feeding millions of people every day. And I said, Scott, I really do. But I'm going to tell you something you haven't thought of, and it's going to bother you. And Larry, he looked at me like, well, what could that be? He's a pretty smart guy. I said, I don't go to bed at night thinking about the children we saved. I go to bed at night brokenhearted over the children we couldn't reach. And when we don't have enough money, Scott, we have to choose which children eat, which children don't eat, which children live, which children die. I said, how would you like that job? And he looked at me and says, oh my God, I never thought about it.
Right.
Then he went from like, you got the greatest job. Then he said, well, how do you have hope?
Because that seems like the worst job in the world. Deciding who lives and who dies, who eats and who doesn't eat.
You know, when you're out there, it doesn't matter if it's war-stricken Aleppo, Syria, and that little girl, 3, 4 years old, comes from behind that war rubble building. It's like a flower in the desert. That's my little sister. That's God's image, and I'm not giving up on that child. And so that's what we're all about. Love your neighbor.
Wow. Okay. He's a poet and a preacher. Please give the governor a big round of applause. Thank you so much, Governor. Thank you for your time. Should I keep going? Is that video? No? Y'all still here with me? Yeah. Okay, wonderful. And now we are going to talk about that. Are donors, big philanthropy, and consultants hijacking Africa's economic agenda? I phrased this as a question mark so that I can hear your audible reactions. Shall I try that again? Are donors, big philanthropy, and consultants hijacking Africa's economic agenda? Ooh, it got real quiet in here. Please welcome to the stage Brian Kagoro, Managing Director of Programs, Open Society Foundations, and Sarah Maka, Executive Director for Africa, Other One Campaign. Welcome. Brian. Hello. Please welcome. Thank you both for continuing this conversation. We come from a part of the world that there's a lot of interest in, and there's a lot of money going into the continent. Sarah can grab that, and Brian can just put that off the table there. So this was not framed as a debate, but I want to hear your perspectives about whether you think our agenda as a continent is getting lost in the many interests that are operating on the continent. Sarah.
So my response is yes, sometimes, and no. Because Africa is not homogeneous, so it depends on, yes, when the African country does not know what they want to do with the agenda, then they have a vacuum and people fill it. Sometimes when the power imbalances really do tilt towards not what Africa wants, but what the participants, the consultants or big philanthropy wants to do, So I find that there's some disease darlings. Like we want to eliminate a disease, which is great, malaria.
Right.
But what Africa needs is a system that needs to be stronger. So whatever disease hits the system, it's better. And no, there's some African countries that understand exactly where they're going, how they're going to get there, and you need to participate in their journey. And when you come into those spaces, you fall in line. So it does depend on the country.
Brian, you've been working in development for a long time. Are you still optimistic? Right track? Getting sidetracked?
I remain very optimistic. After all, we survived slavery and colonialism and our own stupid dictators. So, I mean, in a way, I think the question has two elements to it. There is a Pan-African agenda that's set through the African Union and the regional economic communities that's not like a single country one. That agenda is premised on the understanding that no matter how competent, clear, and decisive a single African country is, we remain economically non-viable until we come together as a unit. And there are many people who'd rather have us engage in a political beauty pageantry of which country is the darling of which or Western country or which donor group. Once you do that, and you miss the fact that Africa can only win as a collective, because a single country, high-level performance, exceptionalism of single countries is a myth that's peddled by idiots. It is not possible. If you look at the economy of California alone, compare it with the rest of the continent, the four things that would make us win require collaboration, coordination, and integration. Number one, collective security. Number two, collective economy. That means our continental free trade related. Number three, human capital, the greatest resource that we have to offer. And of course, we know that as the rest of the world declines, both in fertility and in numbers, and we increase with young people who are tech savvy and etc., anybody who wants tech-savvy labor requires us. Anybody who wants care work and etc. requires us. Anybody who wants teachers requires us. Smart agricultural workers will require Africa. It is at that level where fragmentation is choreographed and engineered because it is based on colonial affinities. You approach countries and then you have them fight on Francophone, Anglophone, Arabophone, or whatever other phony, you know. So that's fundamentally the issue is we've seen the African Union assert itself on climate, seen the African Union or Africans assert themselves on global tax reform, seen Africans assert themselves in other. This needs to happen more. Now, it is one thing to stand up to bullies and exploiters, quite another to have the capacity to do own liberation. But there is a predisposition towards begging and being aided even by people who extract the wealth from you that they then use to aid you. So the fundamental issue is a failure of perception, a failure of vision, a failure of consciousness in the leadership. And that's what fragments. The donors can only exploit a mindset that sees itself as incapable, a mindset that sees itself as subordinate. Otherwise, why? We have 30% of critical minerals. We have everything that it takes to be the leader. And we're not only being led, we're being, what is this when you have a remote control?
Control.
Manipulated.
Yes.
Sarah.
Brian raises a great point, but the picture you've painted has nothing to do with donors, philanthropists, or consultants. I mean, I watched the speeches at the UN General Assembly meetings, right? I wish the president caucused and said, well, we have splintered agenda. We have countries, but we have one thing we'll speak on one voice with. But even we are not doing that. So how do we, if we're not even banding together, I mean, China has 1.4 billion people. China, one country. India, 1.4 billion people. India, one country. Africa, 1.4 billion people, 54 countries. And if we're not coordinated as 54 countries, then we allow porous sort of borders that anyone, if we don't have charge, can come in.
I hear you, but I must come back here. I hear this a lot from Africans, Sarah, and with all due respect. The continuities of the colony and empire are such that if all this was just dependent on our agency and no one else had a desire on our minerals, a desire on space to set up their security bases, and a desire to control future energy, then what you're saying would be 100% correct. There is our own responsibility, which is what I framed as the mindset predisposition. But there's also that there are people actively trying to make sure you are divided. Because if you get all these funny Africans united, then you won't be ripping off their critical minerals for free. You won't be building military bases that they don't need. You won't be doing things that make them more fragmented. So we have to balance imperialism, neocolonialism, external interference, and domestic stupidity as two things. You can walk and chew gum at the same time.
All right, Brian and Sarah, the Africans might all come, all 55 countries with their own agenda, but they have some unified positions on reforming the UN Security Council, for instance, on reparations, on reforming the global financial systems, but no one is listening because their voice carries no weight.
Well, I'll reframe that. I wouldn't say no one is listening. So when Africa started the Continental Free Trade Area in 2018, number one, that was the fastest agenda to take hold on the continent. It happened in record time. And whether people want to listen or not, Africa is coordinating amongst itself, and we're trying to set it up. We have 2 guided trade processes to say, how are things happening? Unfortunately, the first time we sent things from Kenya to Ghana, it took 6 months. Then the next time we sent things, it went to Singapore, and then it came back home. So we are finding the kinks in the system, but we are doing it ourselves. So there's one element is we can coordinate internally whether the outside world listens. But the second element is we will need partners on the outside. And it takes the advocacy, it takes the working in different diverse regions to ensure that we have allies outside of Africa, and we'll keep pushing the boulder up that hill till it falls over.
If the Africans do coordinate and have a unified position and set their own agenda, economically or otherwise, will the partners follow if it's not in their best interest?
You know, that's the point I'm saying. Most literate, educated Africans don't know how to talk about the ethical leadership and vision failures of their leadership and the malicious imperial designs of the external actor. Because we speak in binaries, especially in this development sector, because you want one clear failing. My suspicion, I'll tell you where Africans were agreed. Lagos Plan of Action, African Alternative on Structural Adjustment Program. I can give you thousands where they were agreed. And President Obasanjo, and I was very much involved at that time in the African Union, President Obasanjo came up with a proposal on how to finance the African Union, right? Which included airline taxation of some of the major airlines, and the developed nations went and turned on the screw on their former colonies and said, well, look, this will bankrupt or this will cause this. I don't think we'll ever be let alone. So we must learn what every African village woman knows, right? You can do certain chores and tasks in the storm. Nobody's going to sit back and say, hooray, our supply of slaves, our supply of raw minerals that drove our industrialization, our supply of free labor is finally decided to be free. Oh, let's cheer them up. Come on. Where will they get free underground water from? Where will they get critical minerals from? From Africans who are now negotiating for hire. No one will ever leave us to develop free. There are no Santa Clauses and Mother Christmases for Africa. Africa has to realize it is both asserting yourself but fighting for this turf, because everybody else needs what we have, and they're not going to come for it at a fair price. So protestations that say, hey guys, be humane. Ask the African American population here, and many other people of color who've been asking, hey, we too are human, treat us as human. Self-interest that has driven much of our corporate and political sector, greed, has the danger of not knowing any parameters at all. This is why brilliant African intellectual ideas from these conferences and halls must meet with African movements, because without popular movements that defend these claims to sovereignty, to a new direction, then all we're doing is intellectual ballet, right?
I feel like Sarah wants to push back and say that we're not just doing intellectual ballet.
That's right. I mean, the pragmatic picture is that Africa, I mean, when we think about the initial design, the purpose, Africa really was a place for the resources that everyone else wants. But I have to remind us about allyship, and I have to remind us about what we've been talking about on the stage all afternoon, that yes, we do have a self-determination pathway, but it'll require others to join. And the example that comes to mind actually is the Fair Trade Coffee campaign that went on in Latin America. What I loved about it was the fact that it required consumers in the West asking questions around, where'd you get your coffee from? And were those farmers fairly compensated? So yes, the farmers had been fighting for a while, but if they didn't get the allies from around the world to create a surround sound around them, they couldn't push that issue forward. Similarly with apartheid, right? It required, I remember growing up with the Free Mandela songs from Nigeria, there was a sense of solidarity from around the world that supported the country, and this time it's country, to move an issue forward. So yes, I think clear-eyed about the design, but also let's not forget where allyship lives and how to use those partners and those voices to our benefit, because it helps the work go further.
Sarah.
Yes, Brian.
There are a lot of white people who have won Nobel Prizes for saving Africa, our allies. Many who've won so many accolades. And I appreciate...
To be clear, you don't believe in allyship?
No. I do, but it's being over-essentialized. You used apartheid as an example. There needed to be a fighting movement in South Africa on the continent.
Absolutely.
Because you align with a movement that's in motion. Not a substitutionalist system of do-gooders sitting wherever they will be sitting, saying, oh, we want to do good for the Africans. Because that's a basis of old missionary mindsets. What is being called for in this space, whether you're black or you're white, American, whatever it is we got to move to a stage where we realize the problem that we're uniquely African have now become American. I had friends in America trying to equip me on how to deal with dictatorship, equip me how to deal with... and thank God I'm here. I'll help with capacity building, guys. Yeah. Look, I believe...
Step by step dealing with the
Yes,
dictatorship.
I'm used to it. I believe in solidarity. So we agree on one thing.
Yes.
I agree on solidarity, but solidarity is a totally different kettle of fish, and we need to use that word a little bit more. Because solidarity realizes, as Nkrumah said, as he committed himself to the liberation of the rest of Africa, that independence and liberation in Ghana remains incomplete as long as the rest of the continent is not liberated. Now, before, we could sit in the West, Look at, oh, poor Africans, they're dying of hunger. Poor Africans, they're ruled by brutes. Poor African, they're presidents. We could even give lectures in African parliament saying what you all need are strong institutions. Yeah, I'm here. The institutions are strong, but we're in the moment that we're in here. So globally, what we are facing is a need of a circular, reciprocal, mutual pact that says there are certain values that define us collectively as humans for which we must fight. Not because we are helping anybody, we are helping ourselves, rehumanizing ourselves. I'll tell you, as an African, Africans give solidarity to everyone for everything. On some of the most key struggles, right? You could see South Africa take up the Gaza case and etc. On some of the key struggles, I tell you, there are very few people from anywhere else who will stand with Africa in solidarity on the things Africa is. Everybody's always trying to do, what do your computers do? Autocorrect, eh? It's a spelling check. You come and say, I want to articulate this way and say, that's happened on climate. We want reparations, climate reparations. Say, we don't think that will be accepted. So what you gotta say is loss and damage. We want this. So the African is constantly being asked to tone down. Behave yourself. Yeah, fit into the mold. For goodness sake, those of us perhaps who are elites will fit into the fold, but the Gen Zs are not fitting into the mold. So there is now a fundamental disconnect between our talk, which is really sensible, which has finesse and etc., and the streets, which are now impatient for the urgency of now. And I'm saying that is where we should be, appreciating why this is urgent.
I mean, I agree, and Brian, what I'm hearing you say, and I agree, is the movement starts internally. It has to start charity begins at home, so it has to start at home. Whether it's neat with our generation or it's messy with Gen Z, it starts at home. And then it expands to the rest of the world. We have to understand where our agenda is and our goal is collectively at home, and gather others to join us. So we are in agreement around that.
Is it possible? Okay, he's giving a. Is it possible to have external support rooted in African priorities?
Yes.
That asserts African agency and sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
How?
I think there's a litmus test for this, which is, number one, where's the idea coming from? The minute the idea is not centered within Africa, then there's a alarm bell should be going off. That's number one.
But my nonprofit cures malaria. I don't deal with anything else. My job is to eradicate malaria.
That's fine. When you come to my country, if malaria is on my to-do lists because it's part of my plans, then yes. If it's not, then maybe go to another country. Thank you. So where's the idea coming from? That's number one. Number two, where are the resources going to? Because sometimes the resources are proposed to go to a certain place, but maybe 20% hits my country. So I have to be very... it's back to the African countries, back to the continent, right? Making sure we're filtering the offers of support through our lens of what resides within the continent, what helps us. So where's the idea coming from? Where are the resources coming from? Is there a parallel process being built because the funding is coming? Or have we sidelined the ministries of health because of legitimate reasons, they have no capacity, or illegitimate reasons, we don't like the way the guy looks? Right? Have we created alternative governments so that the minute you pull out, this country can sustain itself? Where's the sustainability? Have you ensured that we have deposited the knowledge, the ability to do this after you leave? When those things don't check out, then you know it's not really helping Africa. I think the EU had a treaty or MOU with Namibia for green hydrogen.
Right.
And that's to shore up Europe's supply. The idea is not Namibia's, right? Namibia is a means to an end in this case. The idea is Europe's supply. So I think we clearly know how to think through the process to understand if it's supporting Africa or it's hijacking our agenda.
Brian, do you see a path here forward?
Yeah, I think that. So one of the most fundamental thing, and I think it's the bulk of the people here in the room who are not from Africa, who are friends of Africa. A lot of them understand this, that the dangers of the old model was you'd get into a community and make assumptions of what they need based on their dissimilarity from you. I always tell this joke that I went to a community that's near a river. It's almost, I call it coastal, but it's a river. And nobody was wearing shoes. They were all walking bare feet because I think in their local religion, they believed that you got healing from being on touch with the ground. But my first instinct was, we need to buy these guys shoes, man. We don't get them shoes. I can't believe the whole village doesn't have shoes. But I was based on my assessment of what many of the people in this room, and I know a number, have been doing, is finding out based on local culture, local priorities, local agency, how best to build up institutions that can sustain themselves even when they are not donors, and how to link up those institutions with other communities engaged in similar struggle. So to that extent, the people in this room, at least the majority of them, are trying to do things not to make Africa similar to America, not to make Africa similar to Europe, but to build out, because I keep saying to people that Japan taught us this as did China. India has taught us as well that you can learn from everybody else, but the most powerful way to create wealth and agency is using your own language, your own culture, your own reality. And very often, including Africans from the diaspora, including Africans those of us who came for education here, when we go back, we try and produce a civility, a new missionary project. But what the people in this room do is different. You are trying to understand these are civilizations. And I always give this joke that I once ran a program in an international development agency. We were sending a lot of people to go and teach women, elderly women in the community, how to do budget, how to save. Now, the tragedy of that logic was this. Some of those women had raised 10, 15, 12 children on less than $2 a day. I couldn't, per diem, at $10, $10 a day, I couldn't make ends meet, right? I was running an advocacy campaign, increase the per diem so that it's living. And I'm trying to teach somebody who can, on less than $2 a day, raise 12 children, 4 of them become PhDs, masters. Some of them are sitting in this room. Surely I must be studying, what kind of genius does it take on $2 a day to raise children who sit in these walls and argue, not going to teach some work textbook nonsense. So in a sense, and I'm just using that example, there are many other examples. Organic intellectuals drive innovation, not laboratory cooked, smart, bookish people.
We have to leave it there because we could be here all evening and we'll only be getting started. So a big round of applause for Brian and Sarah, please. Thank you so much. And now I want to introduce an entrepreneur from Rwanda his work highlights the uncomfortable questions that innovators must ask of society when trying to solve urgent problems. Please welcome Isabel Kamariza, founder and president of Solid Africa.
Hello. Good evening. I'm so happy to be here and have an opportunity to share Solid Africa's story, challenges, and solutions. My name is Isabel Kamariza, and I'm from Rwanda. And 15 years ago, my friends, my family, myself, and later more friends and more families in the community, we decided to take our own problems in our own hands. We started an initiative based on solidarity to achieve nutrition security for all and for good. In Solid Africa, we are providing more than 9 million meals. We have provided more than 9 million meals. We are feeding school children, 14,000 of them daily, and we are working with 100,000 patients yearly. And We are doing that through a sustainable model where we are linking almost 6,000 farmers, where we change their practices into regenerative agriculture, train them, give them inputs on time, and then we run an industrial kitchen to be able to deliver those meals. So our solution isn't a solution that we learn on the book. It's a solution that we learn in doing the job for those 15 years. And when we talk about nutrition, we have this big data. Almost 3 billion people can't afford to have access to a healthy meal. But why? At Solid Africa, we have been able to debunk that idea, that it is expensive to feed people. What it is expensive is the systems that we have put in place to make the food come to the patient, come to the student. In 2023, we signed a public-private partnership with the government of Rwanda into scaling our models in all public hospitals. And since 2024, we are revamping the school feeding program with the Ministry of Education. So when we talk about the patient, they don't just need medication. They don't just need drugs, technology. Often funders, when they fund food, healthcare, education systems, they fund with what they know and what they want to fund. They fund pharmaceutical, they fund factories, and it's good and it's great. But too often we forget the patient or the student or the smallholder farmers that we are there to care for. A patient cannot heal only on medication. He needs 3 meals per day that are medically tailored meals to his illness. A student needs a meal that is not the same meal every day. They need meals that are diversified. At Solid Africa, we provide a 14-day rotation menu using more than 7 staples, as well as 30 vegetables and herbs. But more than that, we source everything locally. The only thing that we import are oil and some condiments. Our model works. Our models have known reshuffling, refinancing, modeling, and all of that for those 15 years to actually find a solution that we could deliver and partner with the government. So many organizations on the ground, they know the reality. They know that the patient needs to eat. But too often, they are stuck into feeding in funding categories that the West has put in place, into funding and bending our own programs into court of proposals that fits what they want to do. So my question today is, whose priorities are we centering? Whose voices are we listening to? Whose leadership are we trusting? I come from a country where 30 years ago decided that it would never, ever again listen to what people want them to do, but they will take their destiny in hand. And I come from a generation that witnessed all this transformation. So for us, we did the things differently. We didn't want to bend. So for 8 years, we were auto-funded by our own communities. For 8 years, we were cooking in our parents' home. But we never lacked really the support of our government. Through the lens, we never lacked the support of our First Lady. We never lacked the support of our communities. But we lacked, and we're still lacking, funding from the global North, funding from the West, funding from those big organizations to fund issues that can be solved for good. Often people want to bend to what scaling means, to hit the numbers. In how many countries are you in? Oh, it's working. When are you moving to another country? I'm not interested too. I want to finish the issue, in my own country. If I spend 5 million in Kigali, in Rwanda, 5 million in Uganda, 5 million in Kenya, I could take all of that money and I can put it into our country and solve the issue for good. We have the chance of being in a country that is well governed. We are ranked 59 globally through the gender index and the second in Africa. It says it all. We are not proving that we can deliver. So today, I won't call it a call to action. Today, I would call it an invitation, a real invitation on how does it look like when it actually works, where we actually solve problems. Every country has hospitals. Every communities have farmers. Every town has hospitals. So our food systems transformation is already there, right in front of us. So why are we getting it wrong? I think there are many aspects, but let me touch on another one. Let's talk about true localization. Often I've seen organizations that are putting a face of an African leader as the face of the CEO. And it's great. But as long as we are not in those boards that decide on how the money moves, we can't control our destiny. 7 years ago, we were fortunate to find the right partners. We were funded by the Imbuto Foundation, the Seagull Family Foundation, and CRI. And I asked something that nobody asked me in a call of a proposal. They asked me, what would it look like for you to design a solution that you know works in your country, in Rwanda? And since then, they've been with us, with many more, designing those solutions, partnering with us, being patient in finding out what works. But organizations like Seagull Family Foundation, they go above. They're not just funding locally leaders, locally led organizations. They are putting people like us in their own boards for us to shift the way they are thinking about how we can solve those issues even after we die. But more than that, there's this idea that people can't find us. All of those local leaders, we went on the ground, we did a call proposal, but we didn't find somebody that could actually or had a solution. But you have all those institutions, from Seagull Family Foundation, Ashoka, Acumen, New Voices. I can name so many fellowships that have invested their time to give capacity to people like me to be able to be here today and talk about our story. The issue is not that we don't have the capacity. We do. And sometimes we are overcapacitated by the same training from one organization to the other organization. We learn and relearn. So today my invitation is there. If you truly want change, not just patching, not just creating dependency, but really creating transformation, you have to start investing in local leaders who are proximate. I will tell you two stories and then I stop. I was in a room where they were discussing about school feeding. And one person suggested, you know what, we should also think about snacks. And the audience laughed. And I asked myself, why? Don't they give snacks to their own kids? I know I do. Another story, it's a guy that I once met in a refugee camp, working for big organizations. And I asked him, with all the resources that you see how much money it is raised, why can't we provide meals that are diversified, that are not the same? Who can eat the same food again and again? You won't feed your kids like that. And he told me something that changed my mindset. He said, without thinking, my kid is not a refugee. And I said, that's true. And that's why we have to own our problem. We have to own also the solutions. And not fitted on how people want to fund us, but fitted on the solutions and the work we've been doing. Thank you.
What an amazing example of what local ownership and leadership looks like. Thank you, Isabel. We're rounding up now, just 1 minute left. I just want to say thank you to all of you who have stayed with us today, to our team, the One Campaign team, Kim, under Kim's leadership, Shelby, Michaela, the whole team behind this, our One volunteers, our One champions. We love you. To the Rockefeller Foundation, to the excellent speakers, to our funders and our partners in the room, thank you. Thank you to everyone. This has been uncomfortable conversations, right? We've asked some tough questions today that we hope you go home and continue to reflect on. Is Africa ready to take on its own challenges? Do we need to redefine the way the philanthropy and development shows up? Is there a way to do local ownership? And how do we partner across the world? And believe me, we will amplify these voices outside this room, and it will shape the work we do over the upcoming years in partnership with many of you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're just gonna end with one video that inspires me every day. It's just 1 minute, and it's a video that we partnered with a Nigerian poet to produce. So just watch. Thank you.
They say Africa is risk. Interesting. But stay with me. You mean Lagos, where fintech rises before the sun? Or Joburg, where Charles LeBron didn't walk? Or Dakar, where rhythm breaks the rules? Risk? No. This is return. Return on belief. On the girl in Enugu sketching dreams which are cool. On the boy in Soweto coding futures from a shared laptop. And a Nigerian musician making dreams from a stolen laptop. On the market woman in Kumasi who knows profit without spreadsheets. On justice. For once, we know how to build with bruises. Remix scarcity into rhythm. We stretch coins into companies, our sweat, blood, and bodies. We take what the world throws away and say, not so fast, Abiku. We reinvent. You still don't get it. This is not aid. This is alignment. You don't donate to us, you partner, or you get left behind. Because the continent moves quietly, powerfully, unapologetically. So your hesitation is your loss. Because what we call hustle, you call innovation 20 years later. We are not waiting for green lights. We are building roads on red. We are not fragile. We are anti-fragile. Our wounds became weapons. Our delays became data. Our waiting made us wise. Africa doesn't need your charity. Africa is your clarity. On where the future breathes. On where the world resets. On where value multiplies like cassava after rain. So if you fear risk, don't come. But if you're looking for a return, on imagination, on resilience, on tomorrow, welcome. Welcome to Africa.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the evening.